All right, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Todd and Taylor Show. I'm Todd A.
And I'm Taylor Trask. How are you?
I'm pretty well, and it has been a long ass time since we have done a Todd and Taylor show.
God, yeah. It's been since I think the last one we did was our Batman v Superman Palooza.
Yep.
Long after the movie came out, but still relevant in my eyes. I mean, even now, I think it's still relevant. It just came out on DVD and Blu-ray, so we gotta dissuade people from participating, or I do anyway. You actually
You want to dissuade people from participating in buying it?
in consuming it in any way, pirating it, buying
so
it.
your opinion has gone down.
Here's the deal. Everything you need to see in that movie is now on YouTube in like 3 or 4 videos that they pulled from it, and all of them contain Wonder Woman being badass. And that's all. And in fact, I find it very interesting that all the marketing materials now, post theater and like DVD, all include Wonder Woman front and center of every, like, it's Batman and Superman are like to her sides and behind her. And like she is absolutely front and center when even on the movie posters themselves, like, going into theaters, she was never, she never shared a poster with the other two, characters. So it's interesting. It's telling. That's what it is.
Well, yeah, it is. And it's funny too, because we both remarked we didn't understand that her role would be so big. So I guess that was part of the reason that they didn't put her on the posters to begin with, was they were sort of holding back how, prominent her role would be. But that was the part we enjoyed the most. So
yeah, I think everybody did, and I don't know. The more pictures I see from the upcoming movie, the more excited I get. I'm even wondering, in hindsight, if they should not have, like, let's say I worked at WB or Warner Brothers in an executive capacity, and I was somehow responsible for everything that's happened so far, post Nolan, like everything we've seen with Batman, Superman. I was gonna say the Superman Last Action Hero, Man of Steel. And then Batman v Superman, like all of that, just looking at it, I would have said, okay, what we should have done was go back, clean slate, we'll start this Iron Man style, and our Iron Man's going to be Wonder Woman, and make her the Robert Downey Jr. sort of crux of this whole thing that builds out. I feel like there's so much. Marvel is late to the game on the female superhero front, and they're still... Yep. DC's still going to beat them, but they could have owned that space so definitively that Marvel would have had to play catch up for once. And
yeah.
They still might. They may. I mean, by this time next year, we'll know, if it's going to be great or if it's going to be mediocre.
Well, I'll tell you, we're going to talk about it in a minute, but I just got back from seeing a movie, and one of the, it was more than a preview, it was like a giant ad that ran before the movie, was for Suicide Squad, and front and center through the whole thing was Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn.
Harley Quinn, yeah.
And in fact, they even have the line from her in the movie where she's like, maybe she said it. I don't know. It's like it was an ad where she's like, "Hello, Regal cinema goers. I'm Margot Robbie.
Oh, really?
And this is I just want to let you in on the Suicide Squad. It's coming August 5th, blah blah blah, or whatever it is. I don't remember exactly." And she either in that little narration where she's speaking or in the movie, there was a line about how, she's a bad guy turned into a hero, and it was, I mean, the whole thing was pivoting around her character in the movie. So I wonder if they're kind of exploiting that. I have heard on the minus side, though, that the writers on Wonder Woman are 2 white dudes. So.
Yeah, well, the director's a female, so there's that.
Yeah.
And I don't mind that, actually. Like, I don't mind, because I have seen a lot of dudes really sympathize and understand the female perspective, sympathize with and understand the female perspective, and can write really well. I mean, like Joss Whedon, for God's sakes, writes really great female characters. So like the fact, it can happen. And I'm encouraged that there's a female director. I think that was the important thing. That sensitivity of like, what are you showing? Like all of that, there would be a very distinctive style if Zack Snyder had directed that movie versus, and I apologize, I can't remember her name. She directed a couple Game of Thrones, if I'm not mistaken. She was going to direct Thor: The Dark World, and then they replaced her. And now
Patty Jenkins.
Patty Jenkins was the original Thor: The Dark World director.
Wow.
So I wonder if she'll bring any of that sensitivity to this project. I can't wait. If DC pulls this off, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see more kind of backpedaling into the Justice League movie, where Wonder Woman's kind of like all of a sudden like the more of the Captain America leader character. Like I worry, and I don't know when Justice League quits filming, But if it's, they may do pickups after Wonder Woman comes out, specifically for that purpose.
Yeah, I would like to see her in that role. I mean, that's where she should be for sure.
When so many
Yeah.
people don't know, like, you can rattle off Batman's origin story, with blindfolded. You could most people could give Superman's origin story more or less.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know a single person, and I don't even know people. The comic, the writers themselves can even agree on like what Wonder Woman's origin actually is. Seems like it's constantly getting reinvented and retooled for the better or for the worse.
Yeah. I mean, I think I could probably give you a pretty accurate reading of it.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying like the
but I know what
majority.
you mean. Like sort of the general audience knows the hero, but doesn't necessarily know the origin.
So this movie would be like the kind of pinnacle. Every commoner out there, every civilian, if you will, who sees this, like, this will be their entry point to the Wonder Woman story. So young girls, old women, like, everybody's gonna be like, well, that's how she. So if they fuck that up, it's gonna be egregious. That's the other side of this too. If they fuck this up, I just don't see how the DCU or just anybody in that DC brain trust gets out of it unscathed.
That is my kind of my. I mean, I don't really care if there's a DCU cinematic universe, I guess. Is the funny thing. Is like, we've seen Marvel do it and it's been largely successful, but maybe we should just jump into this topic first. The superhero fatigue thing may be setting in, and that's chiefly my concern with Suicide Squad. Is what is it like when you introduce your first team up movie, after Superman, Batman, like your first big group, and it's a bunch of bad guys. And you're basically doing like the DC version of Kick-Ass or something, or Kingsman, where we all.
No, let's not go there.
Well, I just mean it's sort of their nod to that of like, here's a group of anti-heroes, playing heroes.
I worry. My problem with Suicide Squad is that I am afraid the marketing is 10 times better than the movie. And that they have gotten really clever and great at putting these trailers together with Bohemian Rhapsody and like all these different songs, and it's like, oh my god, and I'm not sure any of that's going to appear, like, everything from the cuts to the music, like, it's just not going to be there, and everybody's going to walk into the movie going, well, that's not as fun as the trailers made it seem. I worry, like, I mean, and granted, with that first trailer that everybody loved, they've had time to maybe get some rights to some of those songs and put them in the movie proper, and I bring this up because Guardians of the Galaxy delivered on the promise of their trailer. So it wasn't like, here's our cool marketing and the movie's different. Like, it's the movie's like, no. We are a bigger version of the trailer you saw, soundtrack and all. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. I worry that it's going to be a really generic, forgettable action movie that has some funny, some people in like sort of funny costumes.
Yeah.
And
Batman.
I mean, one of the things that worked so well about Guardians of the Galaxy was that team up of weirdos. Like, they just made it work for them, and it was so great. And I just, I think in one of our very early podcasts last year, you described the Suicide Squad trailer in some really great way about, like, it being a team up that doesn't work, and so. We'll have to go back into the vaults for that one. But I say let's bookmark that.
Yeah.
And let's actually get into superhero fatigue in another episode.
Okay.
Let's get back on our outline.
Yeah.
And knock this out. I guess I'll start it, and I'll just open the questions to you, which is,
okay.
I literally just got back from seeing Ghostbusters.
Oh, wow. Did it open this weekend, right? We are talking at opening week. Okay.
Yes, we are talking opening weekend. I really hoped to see it. There was like a special screening right around the corner from my house a few days ago, and I just could not make that. So I went on a Saturday afternoon, and I'll intro it with this, because I walk into the theater. I'm standing in line to buy my tickets, and this mother first of all, the theater, like, their marquee has changed to like, "Happy 8th birthday," and some child's name, and I was like, huh, kids have birthdays at movie theaters. Wait, what am I walking into at 4 p.m. on a Saturday? And I get up to the line, and there's a mother with 2 children in front of me, and I hear her say to the person behind the booth, "I need 2 children and 1 adult to Ghostbusters at 4 p.m. and I was like, uh-oh, maybe this 8-year-old's birthday is happening in this theater.
Oh no.
And I walk up to the, I walk up behind her to the ticket taker, and he said rips their tickets and he starts to hand them 3D glasses. Like, maybe it's in 3D, and then I hear the mom go, "Oh, it's in 3D," which I think is even funnier too. Because of course I knew it was in 3D. I was specifically going to the 3D.
No, wait. Why were you so interested in the 3D only?
I just love seeing things in 3D.
Wow, we've never talked about this. So
I think we've touched on it with The Martian and stuff like that. But yeah,
but I wasn't aware of your default. Like, that's usually
whatever is the biggest screen and most interesting experience, I want to go see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So when they do like virtual reality, like that'll be your I'll put on the head thing and stand in the big space with everybody else.
And at this point in my life, I know I will hate it in the first few years of like VR movies,
Yeah.
But because 3D is not what it was, 10 years ago.
No,
and they know how to do it, and it looks really good. And I went to one of those theaters, and this is interesting too because now this is gonna be my go-to theater. The last time I went there, it was the kind of theater that it was a Regal, played the big hits, but in really rundown theaters kind of thing. Like it would be a big, huge screen, but it was the worn-out chairs and stuff. So when I was buying my tickets, so they said the screen lights up in front of me, and she was like, choose your row and seat. And I was like, holy crap. And I'm looking at this thing. She said everything in blue is available. And so, of course, my fears of this child's birthday party happening in here were kind of dissipated because I see that almost all the seats are free. There's a few seats sort of in the middle back that are taken.
And you're sure? And this wasn't an Alamo Draft House or anything like that?
No. It's just Regal, like giant, huge. Wow. Yeah, Cineplex.
I wonder if they're feeling the sort of the pressure universally
for sure
from places.
And it wasn't like a 20 theater Cineplex. It's a 60.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know, 4th row center, and she lights up one of them and is like, is this okay? And I'm like, yeah, okay. And then of course immediately kicking myself like, oh man, 4th row is way closer than I'm thinking about. I need to be behind that. That first division or whatever. But I walk in and it's those huge, comfy, not leather, but like really giant seats with the kick-out tables, and and the row is so huge that you can get up and walk, like you can, run out to the restroom or something, and you don't have to like kick people's legs to do it. And of course, all these mothers and their children are like way in the back.
No, wait, was this the birthday movie theater?
I don't know if it was the birthday one, but it was all like kids and parents.
Okay.
And they were all sort of and it's just a gigantic theater. So I have the whole 4th row to myself. Wow. And I get to lean back in this giant chair and just like absorb this movie. It was such a good experience. And what hit me like as the movie starts is I'm thinking, all these 8-year-olds, this is what they are going to know about Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Is like the women kicking ass and being funny. And I was like, that is so cool.
Interesting.
And I just thought like, what a neat way to take it in, because it's not, I'm sure they know about Ghostbusters because kids just absorb that stuff, but it's not like a thing like Star Wars where it's been in some kind of constant creation for the past 20 years. It's like,
oh sure, yeah.
I have friends who have kids who are like 10 years old or something, and those kids knew about Star Wars way before The Force Awakens because they'd seen the cartoons.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
There's that like ongoing series that's really old, and then like a newer one, and there are all these video games, and like they were already in that world. So to them, Force Awakens was like, oh, just another big movie of Star Wars, Yeah,
well, that's like, that was why Disney's acquisition made perfect sense, because Disney's gotten really good, independent of the Lucasfilm, purchase. Disney's gotten really good at seeding the knowledge of a show or a property in other medium. So, for example, and what pisses me off, they kind of misfired when they did, not to get off on a tangent, when they did Tron Legacy, after the movie came out, I think they were like, well, this made enough money, but we're not sure about a sequel, but we'll create this thing called Tron, what was it? Tron something,
right.
Uprising. Tron Uprising. and it was like a really cool little first season of an animated series for Tron. They put it on Disney XD, with all those things, and so it's like they could build the mythology of that show. I think their plan was, we'll run that for 2 or 3 years, and then it'll take us into the actual movie sequel, and then we'll have seeded. So it was weird that I don't know. They probably should have done that before the movie, the Tron Legacy movie came out. But they did that with other properties a lot. I really think they've really figured it out with Marvel. Star Wars clearly fits that mold well.
So a lot of times we hear that term of like, this is a reboot, and it's like for example, the Star Trek thing. I don't really know if that's a reboot, because there's been it is in the sense that they took the 1960s characters, but in terms of like when we talk about like properties like that, Star Trek's been in constant development for 50 years. And Ghostbusters just hasn't. This is like a true reboot.
Well, the comics fans would strongly disagree, but outside of that, there hasn't been any cartoons or shows or anything else.
Yeah. So I mean that's really my intro to it. You and I talked briefly before we went on the air about not. You said don't worry about being spoilerish, but I honestly don't think that. Well, need to be spoilerish to talk about it.
I kind of want you to just a little bit there, because there's one big question I do have, but I'm gonna go through a series of other questions first. Are you one of those like guys who will wear a proton pack and a Ghostbusters costume to like a movie premiere? Is this a movie that just really like resonates with your past in a very important way? Or are you more like, oh, it was cool, I saw it back then and I'm a fan of it? Or is it more of a casual kind of thing?
I would say it's more casual, but one of the great things about the movie was that watching it, I felt that connection to little kid me watching the first one in a really, really positive way.
Wow.
It didn't ruin any memories of my childhood or anything. It's not Vince Vaughn doing Psycho, a shot-for-shot remake or something. It's like, it is just a reboot of the idea of Ghostbusters, and it captured so much of that vibe of the first one, where I'm like, I felt that excitement, that kind of thing of like, wow, I can kind of see this through eyes that are seeing it for the first time, but I'm also feeling that nostalgic pull to my childhood. But no, I didn't wear a proton pack. It's not something that's like, I've always, liked the first Ghostbusters movie. I didn't really like the second Ghostbusters movie, but I didn't dislike it. It just wasn't. It was one of those things where, like, whatever year it came out, I didn't care about it, and my brother cared about it much more. That's
the thing. I enjoyed Ghostbusters 2 a lot, but you go back and watch Ghostbusters 2, it has a really lame ending. Like, none of the ending made any goddamn sense, and it looked like they were just kind of like you're looking at the same beats of the first one. Like, we need a big giant thing to walk down the streets. We need to focus our beams at a thing. Like, I don't know, just everything about it, and then the fact that the
goofy, like, good feeling kind of, let's get all of New York giving positive vibes, and it was just really corny in that sense of. Whereas the first one had this great mix of like super nerdy occult stuff, and Bill Murray just being zany, Other
people say they hate the aspect in the second one that they've lost all their respect, and like now they're doing like kids' birthday parties. I actually really liked that aspect of it. Like
I did too, and I really liked how like Bill Murray's character. Venkman was like that funny, like sort of late night talk show host or whatever.
Yeah, he parlayed his exposure to like a bit show. It was like a Psychics of the World or whatever it was.
Yeah, I loved that.
I'm gonna get crucified for not knowing the name of that. But like, no, I like that in 5 years. I mean, they never really thought they'd be successful in the first place. You go back and look at the first commercial that they made as Ghostbusters before they even hired Winston. And it's just like this tacky, corny thing. So it's like they were never intending to be this big franchise or anything. So then, like 5 years later, when you see them basically destitute again, it's kind of like, well, that seems appropriate, and like Peter, like everybody's kind of parlayed their success in a different little way, and then the city needs them again. They're like, oh, hey, yeah, we need you guys again, which is, that scene in the mayor's office. That's like the second time that they meet the mayor again. It's just like, well, that, they're like, hey, there's that common understanding that way we're back again at this point. Of course, that doesn't go quite the same way. They puts him in the asylum. And where is that? What happened? Did they get put into like a they get put into like an asylum temporarily, don't they?
So I think they're just locked up in jail, right?
No, but
Or is
I
that
could
the
have
first
swore
one?
like
I
they
don't
wheeled
remember.
them away in like straitjackets. Like there was a scene
Yeah, I kind of remember that.
where like a Congress. See, I need to rewatch it. Anyway, so this idea that the second one was like some miracle, I never really bought into. So the idea, booting it all. Part of me really liked the fact that they were taking it in a like totally new direction, but also part of me is kind of like, well, why didn't you just at least acknowledge the past movies in some kind of story?
it's they could have done that. I mean, but for all these man babies crying about how it's women, or
I'm
whatever,
gonna.
that's just
Well, let me
it's
interject.
so absurd.
Let me interject. I
Yeah,
think 80% of that group is not actually mad about it from a man woman perspective. They're mad about it from a, hey, this movie's dismissing all previous movies storyline. I think it was more of the continuity aspect of it, because I've heard a lot of those
I
guys say
that
like, I don't care. I
that
just
may be a majority of those people, but they're not the vocal ones. That's what I would say.
Yeah,
Because
well, I'll give you
there's
that.
a lot of garbage going around on the internet of men complaining that Chris Hemsworth's character is sexist or something like that, and it's like, yeah, that's what a fucking parody is.
Chris Hemsworth's character looks hilarious in every photo I've seen him in. I'm just like,
He,
what?
yeah, and he's really good in it. I mean, it's silly and goofy and stuff, but it's like he pulls it off. It's not. Yeah, I was kind of afraid it was literally going to be like a walk-on kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Crucial. So I liked that.
Okay, so casual fan, saw it in 3D. Were you a fan of any of these actresses before? Like, were you like, I love Melissa McCarthy, or was just this ensemble kind of a nice?
I really like Melissa McCarthy. Yeah, I mean, I think she's great. I freaking adore Kristen Wiig. I
Okay.
don't know how this like. Yeah, I just want to be best friends with her. I mean, I try to watch all of her crazy indie movies that are on Netflix and stuff like that, and like Welcome to Me is freaking fantastic, and yeah, I just think she's the greatest. And the other two, I'm not really aware of because so that's Leslie Jones and Kate McKinnon,
You
right?
don't watch
Kate
this.
McKinnon.
Yeah, you don't watch
Yeah, and
this.
I don't watch SNL, and I saw some
Shame.
funny
Shame.
comment today on Twitter about like somebody pulling their like snob card and saying like, well, if you're just now thinking Kate McKinnon is funny, then you obviously haven't been watching SNL all these years. And I thought, wow, I think my snob card is even bigger. Where I'm like, why would I bother watching SNL all these years? But yeah, I mean, I haven't watched SNL in like a decade and a half or whatever. I just feel like it's like not been good. So
Yeah, it goes in. I mean, she's basically the female Bill Hader. She's got that kind of like, it's just she's so specific. You can't confuse her for anybody else.
yeah,
Were you
I mean, they're all great in it. My only my complaint on the characterization is, and I want to I don't understand why it is literally the same setup as the previous Ghostbusters, where the African American character is not a scientist like the others.
Yeah.
I just think that's really weird that it's like, okay, once again,
In the world of Neil deGrasse Tyson, they're still
I
they're
know,
still
like
doing that.
why is she the one that works in the subway? And I don't know. It's um, but that I guess that sort of parallel to the earlier movies is the only disappointment to me. And I don't know
Is
if it was
how
specifically a
how
nod
much
to those or what.
how much of the rest of it is? I mean, does it follow the rest of the original movie beat for beat almost? Or I mean, is there a
No,
Dana
no,
White character? Or
no. No, it's definitely not at all like like that. Like it's not at all like a remake at all.
mm,
It's very much like a fresh reboot of the universe. So I know, like I think in one of the previews, here's a spoiler. I'm pretty sure there's in one of the previews that came out last summer. They show them like, walking up to the firehouse,
uh,
and at that time I remember being like, oh man, are you just like literally going to hit all the same beats? But there's a really funny joke about New York Rent. Like they basically look at that firehouse and they are told how much it is to rent it, and they're like, "Get the fuck out of here."
Oh, so the old firehouse does appear in the movie. That was my biggest
It
question.
does appear,
But in
and
that
they're like,
gag.
"We can't afford to rent this. It's a giant building. Like, of
Yeah.
course the rent is $20,000 a month.
Wow.
So Kristen Wiig, is like, get out. We need something cheap. This is ridiculous.
That's
So
kind of
that
interesting.
is not their
Okay.
headquarters, but it's one of the, there's tons of little, not even little. I mean, they're not even like Easter eggs. They're just like straight out jokes where they're comparing it to the original movies.
Do any of the alumni play into those jokes? Like could the alumni cameos?
Yeah, okay. So if you're aware there are cameos, then yes, there are cameos. I went in totally green
Oh wow.
and I hadn't researched like cameos at all. I mean, it didn't surprise me that there were cameos.
Yeah.
And they are not necessarily, they're not, maybe one of them is kind of a callback
Okay.
to her character. Um,
Oh.
but the others are totally new characters, and it's just fun to see them like, oh, what? Wait, like, of course, that's who that is.
Okay, so now my brain's like, well, okay, what would it be? Is it something where like Sigourney Weaver's like a refrigerator salesman or something, and then like opens the door,
Oh my
like
God,
pops
that
her
would
head,
be
and then
so
goes back out again?
genius. No, that is not, that's not it. It's not Sigourney Weaver that I was referring to.
Oh, wait, well,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I think.
Yeah. So there's just some cool moment. Like there's another cameo. There's a couple obvious like cameos, but there's one who's a huge one
Yeah.
that like I did a double take when I saw him.
Wow.
Like whoa, oh, that's who that is. But it's just the first movies were goofy, so that whole it's not too goofy. It really walks that line of like where it's
okay. That was my next question because it had the sort of the sniff of like cheesy 90s movies.
I agree. It definitely, some of the way that they advertised it and promoted it was almost like they were going to remake the story, hit the same beats, with women in the roles, and sort of like wink at the audience all the time while doing it.
Yeah.
And they don't do that at all. In fact,
oh wow, that's great.
one of the things that's funny, because one of the things that I liked about it, and now just talking about it I love even more, is that in this movie the two main scientists, who are the Melissa McCarthy character, Abby, and Kristen Wiig's character Aaron, so they were like sort of previous, they've been, there was a friendship that was sort of split apart, and they get back together, and McKinnon's character, Holtzman, she's just sort of the Looney Tune scientist,
Okay.
But so the Aaron and Abby characters are constantly talking about science, and Aaron's character, I don't think I'm giving too much away here because I saw it in like a promo. They did this thing that was like, meet the Ghostbusters, and they did like these little short 1-minute sort of bio trailers on each of them, and so it'd be like, Aaron, what's her name? I can't remember her last name, and they'd show a little background on Kristen Wiig's character, and so I sort of knew from that like there's gonna be a sort of disgrace that hits her at her university job when they find out she once wrote a book about ghosts. But the storyline is that Aaron and Abby are going, we're scientists trying to prove to you scientifically that these things are happening, which is really cool. I missed the element, of course, this is just like a personal preference goofiness, is that what I love so much in the first one was the occult aspect that Dan brought into it.
I'm going to say, as you've been talking, what was flashing through my mind was, you know what? The first one, the only real scientist was Egon. Like everybody else, like Peter was basically just there for shits and giggles, and Dan Aykroyd was like the occult guy. Yeah, and
I'll go even crazier than that. In the first one, the only real scientist was Venkman, because Egon and oh my God, what was Dan Aykroyd's character's name? But
was Venkman a scientist, or is he like a parapsychologist? Like I thought it was less.
That's true.
It wasn't even like technical science. It was just more like him.
But he's the one that doubts the supernatural all the time.
Sure.
Whereas Egon and Oh
Ray.
my God, Ray. Yeah, thank you. Egon and Ray are the ones that are always like, well, in the, whatever the book of spirits or whatever that they're always reading. They were the ones that were both into Tobin's spirit guide.
There we go. I was just about
Um,
to say it. I was like, somebody's gonna yell at
yeah,
us.
I
We
know.
gotta say it.
And I didn't even have to look it up; it came to me. But yeah, they were the ones that had this really deep knowledge of the occult and the supernatural, and Venkman was the one that was always skeptical of all that. And that's why it was really important that he's the one that gets slimed and actually
Ah,
have like the physical contact, I thought, with a ghost, where he's like, "Oh my
interesting.
God,"
Yeah.
Um, and there is an echo of that too, where we've seen in the trailers that Kristen Wiig, like gets mega slimed, and that's really what her conversion is. Same kind of thing, where she's gone the other way, where she's, was once really, a big researcher into ghosts and trying to prove it scientifically, and then she's got this career as a university professor and scientist, and so she's distanced herself from that past, and asked Abby not to publish this book that they wrote about ghosts, and so when she sort of accidentally goes on this, uh, mission, um, and gets slimed, it's like a big deal. It's like, oh yeah, she's the one that gets touched and has to, kind of find her way back into that role that she was in. So
Interesting.
yeah, but I just loved it that it's like, it's a woman-driven movie, and they're talking about science all the time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and proving that to people, which was a really cool way to go, because I kind of think that if they had gone with the Tobin Spirit Guide thing, it would have been too much of an echo
Yeah.
of those
Yeah.
first two, and it really would have felt like, oh, they're remaking the early ones, not rebooting them.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Well, let me ask
Um,
you on that same note then, at any time in the this is a big spoilery question. At any time in the movie, do they like is there like some kind of ripple across dimensions and they see the original four guys like also with proton packs on, like looking for the same is there anything like that that would even suggest they're looking
no,
out at an alternate universe of any kind?
no,
Okay.
but
That's I almost appreciate that more. I respect that more. I think a lot of people are still holding out hope that they're gonna honor the original. And I'm like,
well,
beyond just the cameos, I thought the cameos was that, you know?
I just think that it honors the originals in such a better way
Mm,
by rebooting it, like doing a fresh reboot. Because honestly, when we talked about it last summer, I would have been okay if this were Ghostbusters 3
yeah.
and they were just the new recruits, even though I believe that's the subtitle of a police academy movie.
I was gonna say
Um,
you're basically that, but here let me step in because this and I can just hear all the if you're still listening. I mean, there's a bunch of people who probably tuned out because they're like, ah, fuck this Ghostbusters movie. But there's probably a lot who are still just waiting. They're like just angry, thinking, well, maybe Taylor will say something. You there's so many people who just hate this movie without ever seeing it for so many reasons. But the biggest one is that I think exactly that. It wasn't called Ghostbusters 3. It didn't follow those tropes. And I'm like, you could have. I don't see how that wouldn't have veered into Police Academy 7. Like
yeah, I
it
agree.
had that sort of formula for it where it's like, everything about it would have satisfied that group, but it wouldn't have been interesting to anybody else, like
It,
you especially.
yeah, and they wouldn't admit it, but it would have satisfied that group because it would have like subjugated the women below the men's story of like they created this universe and the men
Or
and the
just it
women
would
just inherited it or
or
whatever.
even if you want to take the sexist thing out of it, if that's not you, Todd, but you, the audience who think this way, you're still gonna hate it because it spends too much time in the past. It spends too much time with the past movies and not enough time just setting its confident foot forward, saying this is the universe now. And yeah, here are the old guys, but this is what we are now. You know.
There was such a weird thing when there's definitely like a larger story here of how do we consider reboots and remakes and adaptations and things like that in our culture. And to me, the more and more I think about it and just recall this, Ghostbusters showed sort of the best of how to do all of that,
Mm.
like this new one, um, where I mean, when you think of like, well, the new, this is a terrible example, but the new Point Break, where I just when from the first time those ads came out to when I actually was horrified to learn how much money it made in China recently, I kept thinking, what in the hell compels you to remake Point Break? and it had nothing to do with like some childhood attachment to it. It was just like nobody that thing doesn't need there does need to be another movie
Yeah, but
to it.
I'm gonna be honest with you. The cinematography in that remake is
Do you
freaking
see it?
gorgeous. I checked it out because the trailer was like a goddamn adventure video. I thought there would be a National Geographic or Red Bull logo popping up at the end instead of a movie title. So I was kind of like, oh, there's a movie, really? So I went to it only wanting to, I mean, I didn't even need to, there could have been no story and there really wasn't. So I could have cared less how good or bad that was acted. I just like, show me this really kick-ass outdoor footage. And I was just like, I just marveled at it. And so, I'm guessing the pitch went something like that. Like, you guys remember Point Break? Let's shoot the shit out of it this time. We've got all these cameras. We got GoPros. Let's really make and like, that's all people needed to hear. They're like, who cares who's in it?
Well, honestly, I have no idea. We may have even talked about this on a podcast, but my guess is that it has something to do with the intellectual property rights.
Oh, sure.
And whatever studio owns that was like, look, we're going to lose this, and we'll never be able to make a sequel.
There's got to be a point.
Got to reshoot a movie called Point Break. It doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with Point Break.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Are you saying that Point Break 2 is the Roger Corman's Fantastic Four? Is that what you're saying?
Well, but it's not even Point Break 2, right? I mean, it's just
Point Break harder or something.
No, what I'm saying is
Point Breakier.
Oh, I got a better example. It's the Super Mario Brothers 2, where they had another movie made, and then they just decided, let's call it Point Break to maintain our hold on that intellectual property.
Whoa. Are you telling me that Super Mario Brothers, the 1994 movie starring Dennis Haskins and Bob, the dude, the evil guy from Speed, are you saying that movie had a sequel that was made and then canned? Is that what we're talking about? I'm
talking about the game Super Mario Bros. 2.
Hang on. Did I say Dennis Haskins? Sorry, I need to correct this because if you're at home, you're like, did he say Dennis?
Oh,
Belding? Not Dennis. Bob Hoskins and Dennis.
Bob Hoskins, right.
There
I was like, that doesn't sound right.
Jesus Christ. Mr. Belding was not in the Super Mario movie from 1994. Let's just get that straight right now. It was Bob Hoskins and Dennis. Jesus. Wow. That was... I may be going senile if the fact that I combined both of those and that was another guy entirely from the 90s. Sorry. Let's just back away from Super Mario Brothers entirely. I think I've
right. No, I was talking about the game, which super nerds have told me was originally called Doki Doki Panic.
Oh, I've heard this. Yes.
And then
yes.
Nintendo was like, their sequel. This is the story I believe is that the sequel to Super Mario Brothers wasn't working right. So they just took Doki Doki Panic and like stuck Mario and Luigi in it and a bunch of toads and or toadstools and stuff like that and called it Super Mario Brothers 2.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be corrected on that, but that's what I was talking about. Is that like Point Break, the movie could have been any, they could have called it Fast and Furious 20 or whatever it is, but somebody was like, we need to protect this IP, and so they were like, let's just call it Point Break. That's what I'm suggesting.
Well, Superman, I think they had the problem with the Man of Steel because that movie was supposed to satisfy the estates. The creator, Warner Brothers had to do something by that year, or it would have reverted back.
I've referred to this movie to this book before. There's a book called Tales from Development Hell that has some really interesting info on Superman, Batman, and Justice League, and this book is like years old. But definitely worth checking out if you want to hear some of the weird like studio wrangling that happened then. That was the buzzer, man. That was 30 minutes on Ghostbusters.
Fuck.
Is there anything you'd like me to wrap up on it? I mean, should we hit any other topics?
I do want to ask you just a little bit of a lightning round, just because we can talk about plot all day long. I want to go see it, so you've convinced me there. But quick little lightning round. Fast questions, hopefully fast answers. Is Rick Moranis in it?
No, and I'm not spoiling anything by saying that because I know there was like maybe a Hollywood Reporter article from this week where it was like the headline was like Rick Moranis explains why he's not in Ghostbusters. So.
Okay, and these are questions I'm asking because I don't want these to distract me when I actually go and see it. I already asked you to think about the thing. Is the Stave Pop Marshmallow Man who appears in the goddamn trailer all of a sudden? so it's not a spoiler that he's appearing in the movie. Is that more than 5 seconds, or is it just a little quick callback to that character?
It's a callback. It turns into a pretty good gag.
Okay,
but
cool.
but not in a throwback way.
Okay, so it's not an important cameo in any stretch of the imagination.
No,
okay.
it's clearly just like a nod to. I mean, just in the same way that like the car is called the Ecto One.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't want to ask that either. See that some of these questions are a little spoiler. Slimer does appear in it, yes or no?
Yeah, but again, it's all. I think it's all done in like a really. The tone is kept where it's if you saw the first movie, you know what that ghost is, but it's not sort of out of character or tone for the movie. Like it's not distracting at all. Like there's a sort of a role that ghost plays.
Yeah.
And they just used the Slimer ghost to do that.
Okay.
It's cool. Yeah.
Cool. Does Walter Peck make a cameo?
God, no, but that would be awesome. He isn't he dead?
No, the actor's very much alive.
No, I mean, but didn't he die somehow?
No, he just got slimed. No, he's got the marshmallow droppings landed on him at the end. He got covered because they showed him randomly running around New York, and it's just he looks up and it's like, just kind of Stay Put Marshmallow Man blows up. Where do they store? Where is their vault? How does that? Is it the same kind of deal, or how do they store their ghosts?
The vault never comes into play until there's a hint of a vault in the credits.
Okay. So they never invent that. They don't get that far into creating it.
They are not. They're not in the business of busting ghosts in the same way that the Ghostbusters were.
Okay.
Yeah. The circumstances are similar, where they all find themselves needing work.
Yeah.
But it does not turn into like a paying gig.
Huh.
Exactly. And there's scientists, so what I don't want to spoil anything, but they end up getting funded. Basically,
Oh, interesting.
That's the idea.
I'm a little stoked. Then final question: is there a cheesy dipshit music video credits sequence where they all dance to the theme song?
So that's what that was.
Oh no! Really?
No. I can answer that
because the theme song is horseshit.
I can answer that accurately and say no.
And I'm just
the theme song really weirdly. So I haven't heard whatever the one was that got released. Like, I know there was, I saw internet headlines of they re-recorded it and it's terrible. Several versions of the theme appear in the movie, and the very first one you hear is what is his name? Ray Price Jr. The very first theme you ever hear. That's the name, right? Or Ray Price is the country singer. It's Ray Parker Jr.
Yeah. Ray Parker.
Yeah, Ray Price Jr.
We're a mashup. We're a mashup ton of fun tonight. Man alive.
Well, and I imagine that Huey Lewis is counting his money because he successfully.
Is there a Huey Lewis gag? Is there a cameo to Huey Lewis?
He successfully sued Ray Parker Jr. for stealing the Ghostbusters theme from "I Want a New Drug."
Yeah.
Classic. And that theme comes up in so many times that I assume like Huey Lewis is getting paid by several different record labels.
You know what would have been so fun? You know what would have cemented this movie into legendary status? It could have been the shittiest movie of all time, and if they had included some way to get Huey Lewis as a high school principal in a cameo, or even let's say it could just be something as simple as they got to go. The first reporting of a ghost is in the school library, so they have to walk through the administration building, and they walk past, or maybe he's just the librarian, but they walk past a desk, and he's wearing kind of a tweed jacket and glasses and disheveled hair, and they're like, where do we go? He just points, he's like, that way, and then he holds up like a megaphone like he's about to speak, but it just cuts before he gets to say anything. That would have been, oh god.
I know where this happens. I mean, I know that I've seen what you're talking about, but what freaking movie is he the high school principal in?
Back to the Future.
Oh, that's actually in Back to the Future?
Yeah. He's the one who stands up. I'm assuming he's the principal. I mean, he's sitting in the center of the teachers who judge the band tryouts.
Oh, right. When they
sorry, you guys are just too loud.
And
Yeah,
and he's the one
yeah.
that's like it's too loud. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, which
Uh,
by the way, okay, this is the biggest tangent of all time. How I we need to have a podcast where we litigate famous movie moments. And one of the things that would I would bring up is the fact that Huey Lewis in the storyline of the movie, Marty McFly is a Huey Lewis and the News fan. This is proven by the fact that the sports album cover is a poster on his goddamn bedroom wall.
yeah.
So then he writes the song and his band auditions the song "The Power of Love" in the talent show thing. How does Huey Lewis in the real world, which records that song, get a hold of this? Are we supposed to believe that Marty submits that to Huey Lewis in the real world, and that's how he becomes a famous rock musician in the future? Like what?
This is
What
such
is?
a good question because it reminds me of the time that I heard someone suggest that in Tom Hanks movies don't exist. It's like in the America in which any Tom Hanks character lived, there is no Tom Hanks.
He's
But
like the
the most
negative man.
successful actor in America, like ever. And he's it's like
Tom Hanks. I'm gonna pose this, and if somebody doesn't do this, I
man,
will.
we're
But
off
I'm
on tangents
gonna
now.
lay down a challenge right here. It's the first person to create a Doctor Who spinoff, like kind of like compilation trailer thing, where Tom Hanks is the Doctor, gets $1,000 goddamn dollars, because every character, like you can put him in a suit and he's in the 60s, he's in the 70s, he's in the 80s, like and it's like he's now like Tom Hanks, he's across history in so many ways. You could even take Forrest Gump off the table and say you don't get to use Forrest Gump. You could still do this. It would.
I know. He was
easy.
literally in 2 of the previews before Ghostbusters.
Jesus Christ.
Like 2 huge like blockbuster movies that felt the need to advertise before Ghostbusters both starred Tom Hanks.
Wait, which 2?
Sully, the true story of the airline that went down in
is he playing Sullenberg?
He's Sully Sullenberger. And the
of course he is.
third sequel to the Da Vinci Code thing, whatever it is.
Inferno. Did they actually? I didn't think they were serious about making that. I just kept seeing like it's coming.
It is made.
Wow. I actually didn't mind that book. I thought that book I liked better than the original Da Vinci Code. Angels and Demons, the book though, is still by far the best.
And not that we need to clear this up on air, but you love the book Angels and Demons, hated the movie, right?
I am one of those people who hardly ever, I always naysay the people like, the book was better. I'm like, give the movie a goddamn chance. And a lot of times, I'm sorry, but the movie was better.
Okay.
A lot of times.
Oh, wait.
Half the time.
But what are you saying about Angels and Demons?
What I'm saying about Angels and Demons, I am the opposite. The book was far better, and it was to the point where the book was the movie. You could have easily translated that book to a screenplay without losing hardly anything. The pacing was movie-like. That's why I loved it so much.
I knew we'd had that conversation in some way.
It's like the movie was the boring book version of what the book was. I'm like, no. So continue.
Well, is there anything else you want to ask me about Ghostbusters before you go see it?
Yeah, that came out too.
I'll tell you this too, and this is like such an embarrassing thing to admit. I jumped at least twice in the movie.
Whoa.
And granted, a lot of that was because the audio was so effing loud.
Yeah.
But so now when they do scary moments in movies, it's like this audio thing happens, like this audio cue or sound effect happens where you're physically jumping but it did definitely have something to do with 3D. So if you can go see it in a big ass 3D theater, as close as you can tolerate, I'd say do it.
Okay.
It was fun. It was definitely fun. I'm super excited by it, and I will see it again.
There you go, folks.
If anyone wants to go see it with me in Southern California, let's do it.
Pretty great review. Well, on that note,
I've been Todd A. You can find me on Twitter at HeyToddA.
And I am at Taylor Trask on Twitter, TaylorTrask. And
we are
this is
toddandtaylor.com.
That's right. And this has been another wonderful episode. We'll title this Ghostbusters and Other Random Nonsense.
Yeah. Ghostbusters and Tom Hanks.
Yeah. We should throw that at the beginning of it, like, how do Ghostbusters and Tom Hanks relate? Find out. Let people listen all the way to the end where it's like, and by the way, Tom Hanks is in every movie. The end. You're like, what?
You're never going to believe his cameo in the new Ghostbusters.
Yeah. There we go. That's what we do. All right, guys.